Craig, Formula One wheel tethers. Excellent. Never seen one up close and personal. First of all, what material's that?
The material, well, the brand name that everyone recognises it is called Xylon, which is a sort of a nylon type material. Yeah. Incredibly strong in tensile strength, very, very light as well. So it's the ideal material for use in this example.
Well, let's just go back to the history of it, because initially there was only one tether, I think, per wheel, correct?
There was. It was part of the sort of the post-Senna safety drive that they were concerned about wheels leaving the car and going across the track into the fans and what have you. So this was introduced in
Or indeed going back, or not.
And coming back to the driver as well. Yeah. So there's lots of issues where the wheel could create a problem if it becomes detached from suspension, particularly as they were starting to go towards carbon suspension that would completely break rather than just bend as with steel and titanium suspension that was run up to that point. So 98, one tether per wheel. What you have is one end of this will bolt to the wheel upright and the other one will bolt to the chassis or the gearbox if it's the rear wheel. And the theory being is that this would then retain the wheel. They made them stronger, they doubled them up, and now 2018, you now have 3 tethers per wheel, which should really retain the wheel in the event of an accident, as we've seen already this year, particularly with Verstappen breaking his wheels off a number of times.
But why is it we never see these when we look at the cars? Where are they?
So these actually root inside the suspension members. So what you'll have is the aero shape of the wishbone, and this is passing inside and only just pops out just to bolt to the other end. Also, as you can see, these are covered in this black tape. And this is because it's quite light sensitive and it loses its strength if it's subject to UV light. So they're taped over, so you will just never see them until, as I say, you see an accident and you see the strands all pulled apart like you have there.
And they do their job, although of course we never really get to see it because when the wheels are on the car, we just kind of take it for granted.
Exactly. You notice now that you don't see wheels bouncing it down the track. Obviously, if the wheel nut fails, then the wheel will come detached. But obviously, these are for a situation where there's been an accident, the suspension breaks, and it's to hold everything to the car. In some situations, it will break off. Obviously, these aren't infallible. The test for these is 70 kilonewtons. So if we had a tug of war here, we'd need to put the force of 10 F1 cars to try and pull these apart. Wow. So it's an incredible job. And they were put in because the FIA realised that a 20 kilogram wheel and tyre departing from the car can actually speed away from the car at 150 kilometres an hour.
And it's interesting though, because there was talk a year or so ago of a system whereby the air would be suddenly deflated from the tyre, so it was less of a heavy weapon hitting everybody or potentially hitting marshals. What's happened to that? Because that was a pyrotechnic thing, could only have done that, correct?
Just that's right. So when a wheel does become detached, either because the tether's failed or the wheel nuts failed and the wheel is loose, say 20 kilograms, and with it being inflated, it's a bouncy ball. It will just keep going and going. So what was tested with the FIA was, as you say, a pyrotechnic valve that would release the air when certain conditions were met, which was basically when the wheel was no longer attached to the car, except for during pit stops. And they found from testing, they did the rig testing, that if you deflated the tyre, it obviously then the wheel tyre wouldn't bounce around so much and would make it less of a risk to other cars and to the fans. So that's been tested. As far as I understand, that's been parked now, but it's one of those things that can always be resurrected.
I wonder why. I mean, in concept, it's a good idea. I guess what you don't want is the thing going wrong, of course.
The risk of a false positive would be almost as catastrophic as that. Yeah. It's one of those things. The FIA Institute are always looking at new safety initiatives. And it will continue to be on the back burner, I imagine, along with lots of other projects. But at the moment, the improved wheel nuts and the tethers seem to be doing the job of retaining the wheel in the most situations.
One final question. Earlier we were looking at the new 18-inch wheels proposed for Formula One. Would that affect the tether situation?
Not really. There may be a slight change in the weight of the wheel tyre assembly in that situation. But by and large, these will be very much the same 3 per wheel, bolting to the same places. They may just need to be beefed up a little.